This month, we have been looking at love. The theme for the month was on the wings of love. We've been looking at all the different ways to look at love. And today, we're going to talk about the talk's called Love's Descent. And what it is us descending into the love that we are. And if those of us who were here for the meditation got to experience, Sandy gave us a gift today in meditation of finding that mental, or as Reverend Trish, Dr. Trish will say, sensual equivalent of what would it be like if I'm set the intention that I am coming from love throughout the whole day. And then she went on to let us have that mental experience of that heartfelt experience of what if the whole world was doing that. Everyone was coming from love and kindness for a whole day. What would it feel like? And so I invite you at some point in time to take that journey yourself, to feel what that feels like. Because one of the things about love is that it's often thought of as an idea or an ideal or some state of consciousness that we need to attain. And love is our nature. Love is our nature. Ernest Holmes, near the beginning of our book, The Science of Mind, says that this then is the teaching, love and law. And we focus on love this month. Because when you focus on love, law does. Law always says yes. So we focus on love. Love points the way, and the law is what allows it to happen. And so love is our nature. It is what we are. It is something that can never not be there. And I will talk some more about that. And that nature of ourselves is expressed through our actions, our choices, and our behaviors. And from the reading that Sandy did this just now, just grasp that the choices that we make, the actions that we take, the behaviors that we do ourselves. Sorry, I'm stuck for a word there. The behaviors that we have not only affect ourselves, but they affect everyone around us. There's a ripple effect. It's not that's not just a cliche. It's a nice analogy of what happens when however we are, whether we're choosing love or whether we're choosing hate, whether we're choosing joy or whether we're choosing sadness, whatever it is, our actions, thoughts, choices, behaviors affect everyone around us, and boom, 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 it ripples out just like the pebble thrown into the pond. And this microcosm of ourselves is actually a reflection of that macrocosm of the vastness of spirit. And we are a microcosm of that. So we can expand into that macrocosm. We can move ourselves into that. And one thing that is very became very present for me as I was preparing for all the talks this month has been that oneness goes hand in hand with love. They're inseparable. There's an connectedness, and what it does is that going into oneness, reminding ourselves of the oneness of all that is, reminds us that our voices, our choices, our actions affect everyone around us, and that we take the responsibility for the influence of our life, of our own life. We take the responsibility of how we influence everything around us as we spiritually grow, as we spiritually mature, as we fall into, as we descend into, as we come into our true nature that is love. And I love this saying, what we say and do matters. What we say and do matters. There's as we come into this, I was, I love how synergistic everything is, because I'm thinking about oneness and love and our impact. And um, one of our elders in this movement, Reverend Jim Lockard, posted something on Facebook that just, it's like, oh yeah, that's it. That's it. And so I'm going to read these two quotes to you. One comes from a Jungian analyst, Marion Woodman. A butterfly that emerges from a cocoon lives by a very different set of laws than a caterpillar. The butterfly that emerges from the cocoon lives by a very different set of laws than the caterpillar. And this one's from A.A. Milne. And if you don't know who A.A. Milne is, A.A. Milne is the author of all the Pooh books, the Winnie the Pooh books. And so Pooh and Piglet are sitting there, as they often do, and get very philosophical. And Pooh asks very pensively, how does one become a butterfly? And Piglet replies, you must want to fly so much that you are willing to give up being a caterpillar. And Pooh says, you mean you die? And I love Piglet's answer. Piglet says, yes and no. What looks like you will die, but what's really you will live on. So remember that. We live by, as we spiritually mature, as we descend into that truth of ourselves that is love, we begin to live by a different set of laws. And it becomes very evident to you, to me it has, when I slip back and try to be a caterpillar again. The law says, okay, you want it that way? I'll let it be that way. It's not going to let me crawl around, inch along or anything. I'm still going to have to use my wings. I'm not going to munch on leaves, but I am going to have a heck of a hard time being in this new skin that I'm in, if you will. So oneness is key, because no matter what is happening in our experience, no matter how hard we try to disconnect from others or ourselves, we can't. That connection is always there. And I like to think of it as like a golden thread. There is always that connection between our human self and our divine self. And I have changed that phrase, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. Time out. We are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience, and we are in human form doing that. And it's the human form that can cause us to do all kinds of things that are out of alignment with ourselves because of all of the influences around us. And it really became really present to me as I was talking to someone the other day about reconciling with themselves this whole concept of we are all unique, individualized expressions of the divine. Yet there are some really what appear to be bad, evil, however we want to name it. And in particular, it was a group of people who had some negative feelings towards this person. And it's like, I can't reconcile it. I just can't reconcile it. Well, first thing we need to do is to step back, take a breath, and recognize that there, as Sandy said in her prayer, God is all there is. God is all there is. Love is all there is. And those of you in Connecticut know exactly what the rest of that statement is. Love is all there is, and the rest we may make up. The rest is put on us. The rest is not our true being. And so when we remember that, when we remember that about ourselves, when we remember that about someone who are having a hard time seeing that, the way I think of it is there is that golden thread, a golden thread that not only connects me to my divine self, but connects me to the divine wherever it may be. It's a thin thread. And every time I acknowledge that connection to myself or to someone else, that I add another strand to that. And that strand adds another strand and another strand. And every time I bring myself back into my own nature of love and see, no matter what is going on, I see the God in it. I at least even make the effort to see the God in it. Then that I add more strands to that. And what I do is I weave a golden rope. And the more I recognize, the more that I acknowledge, the more seeing God in both myself and all of the experiences that I'm having, the stronger that rope gets, the more strands of faith that I put into that rope. And so it's that trust that right action is taking place. And what that does is that then has me take a step back. Take a step back. And I can ask myself if I'm not experiencing joy, if I'm not feeling love, if I'm not feeling that oneness, I can come out of victim mode and I can go into what's mine to learn from this? What is mine to learn from this? You know, because I can sit there and list all the things that you need to learn. I can see it really well. Whoever you are, not any one of you in particular. Anybody that's not me. The harder one is to see what I need to learn from it. And so when we think about this, when we think about cause and effect, our thoughts create our feelings, create our actions. So if we change our thoughts, we change our feelings, we change our actions. If we change our feelings, we change our actions because our thoughts will change because we changed our feelings. If we change our actions, we change our feelings and therefore we change our thoughts. It's, if you're a mathematician like I can be, it's this little engineer still inside of me. There's an arrow on both sides there. Thoughts, feelings, actions. Actions, if I change my actions, I change my feelings, I change my thoughts. If I change anything in that equation, it all changes. It all changes for the good. It can also all be influenced by things like hatred, by doubt, by fear. And something that I get reminded of is if I am in fear, I am believing in limitation. I'm limiting I'm limiting my divine self. I'm limiting the power and presence of love to bring into my experience what it is I desire, because fear is keeping that out. So when we find that the actions, the feelings, the thoughts that we are doing, the behaviors, the voice, the words that we say, whatever it may be, is a beneficial effect for all of life around me, and life is good and things are going, that's great. But if you find that the effects are not advantageous for yourself or for the others around you, then we must go inside and find the root cause within ourselves and ask that question: what is mine to learn? Another question is, what is the gift in this experience? What is the gift? And I'm going to put in a plug that when you're in that, when any of us are in that dilemma, that's a perfect time to speed dial your licensed practitioner and say, "Hey, I need an appointment." So, you know, maybe we should just put all of the practitioners on speed dial. You can just get to them. Yeah. So it was weird descending into, and at first I didn't like that word, but I'm thinking of it, I'm out here in this human form, and it's out here doing all this stuff that's being acted upon by all my fears and my thought and learned behaviors and societal pressures and all of that. And when I come back in and when I descend back into myself, into my capital S self, I descend into my truth. I descend into my love. Then I can do more self-care, and therefore I can then do more care for all of life. I can embrace the connection that I have with myself. I can embrace the connection and recognize that connection. And then I can also recognize my impact on others, on the world. There's something that I learned about as I was when I was in corporate America, and I was taking one of the instructors to take a Fortune 100 company from a uh, one culture to a culture of that is very much in line with these principles. We learned of a study that was done. It was in the like 1980s. It was done in several different venues. But the one that was really impactful to me was a group of these researchers took the lists of children that were, going into the next year's class, and they randomly picked 5 children from each class. And they sat down with the teachers and they gave them the list of those 5 randomly chosen children and talked with them about how these children have shown in some testing that we've done that they are ready to make this huge leap in their in their intellectual and emotional. They're just ready to just blossom. And we just want you to be aware of it so you can kind of observe them in class, and just we want some feedback from you, but don't do anything overtly or covertly different. Just treat them like everybody else. And in every time they did that, everywhere that they did that, and it didn't matter whether it was children or adults, the people they identified as having this potential to expanded. Their grades went up. Their study habits changed. And it was the expectation of the teacher. And it didn't matter whether they had low scores, medium scores, or high scores on the testing that had been done the year before. They outpaced themselves way more than they were ever expected, than they were in reality expected to. And that happened in post-secondary education for vocational training. It was an incredible experience, and I challenge you. I don't even challenge. I give you the opportunity to think of a time in your life where either you saw something in someone who everyone else around you said no way, and they expanded. Cindy, you may have that. Any of you who are teachers may have many examples of that. Um, and or where you had someone who had that, who wasn't overtly different to you, but they were looking at you from the eyes of any mistake you make is part of your learning curve. My personal experience was when I first came in, my first engineering job. I was the second woman at a manufacturing facility where Corelle dinnerware was made. And what I came to realize is if I sat there and I watched the men who started at the same time, similar education as me, and if they made a mistake, it was okay. They got to correct it. They got to learn from it. They were taken under someone's wing and taught differently. If I made a mistake, it just showed how incompetent I was. And so I used to think of that as, and then that's how I described it to myself and to HR, human resources. For those of you who may not know what HR means, was that what I saw was the men who started with me made mistakes on their learning curve. If mine was evidence of incompetence. And so I had to learn on myself, and I had to expand, and I had to move, I had to do it. But fortunately, very fortunately, I did have that person. I did have that person who had the faith in me. And he took me under his wing. And he wasn't even an engineer, but he took me under his wing and was there to help me through all of that. And I grew, and I like to say I grew in spite of all of that. And I grew. So think of that. Think of that. And that's what Sandy's talking about in that reading that she did, was that we emanate out, we emit this, whatever it is, out, and we affect those around us. When I started a regular meditation practice, I was managing a group of like 30 people. And I got sick and I stopped. After about 6 months, I got really sick and I stopped the meditation, got out of the habit. And one of the people, about a month after that, came up to me and said, and I didn't notice any difference in my own behavior. They came up to me and said, "You used to walk in here and there would just be a wave of peace would just enter the room when you walked in. And ever since you've been sick, that ain't true anymore." And so I didn't know to ask that question, but I did ask the question, what's mine to learn for this? What's the gift in this? The gift in it was I wasn't doing my spiritual practice anymore. I had stopped. And it affected how but just when I walked in the room, I didn't even need to say anything and they could tell something was different. They just didn't know what it was. Yeah, so think about this, because we all share in this responsibility. We share in looking at our thoughts, our choices, what we say, how we you know, I'll even say it, how we vote. Well, no matter what it is, whether it's an election, vote your consciousness. I've had that on the back of my car since like 2014. Vote like vote your consciousness. Vote like your rights depend on it. Vote the way you want the world to be. Now I'll get off there. But we need to be paying attention to all of what we do, because we all have this responsibility. And as we spiritually mature, we need to remember we're not a caterpillar anymore. We are a butterfly, and we are living by a different set of rules now. And that's really important. So love points the way, and the law makes it possible. That's what Holmes has said. That's been said for millennia in different ways. That when we are in alignment with our truth, that things change, and that's because the law is constant and it's unwavering, and it's going to say yes. It's going to say yes to us. And so as we descend into the love that we are, and we start to recognize all of our emotions, we start to recognize all of our feelings, we start to recognize all of the times we feel separate from whatever, from another, from from our own divinity, it's important for us to go back in and lead from love, come from love, consciously choose to let love lead our thoughts, let love lead our actions and interactions. And this essential choice is the foundation for positive outcomes in our own lives. Because the law is going to say yes. And so, well, you know, when I teach the foundations classes or teach anything about the creative process, what I say is, if you're not getting the yes you were expecting, then let's go back in and look at what's the chatter in your mind? Where's the fears and doubts? Where's the emotion? What's way down in that iceberg of the subconscious that is driving a different yes? Because the universe is always saying yes, and what we're asking isn't the yeah, and it's not. Then what question am I asking? What am I putting out there? And let me clean that up, and then we can move forward. And the love is at the forefront of our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions. Then the law works in our favor. As Sandy was saying before we got started about once she and her partner made a decision that they were going to sell their house in Maine, it sold, and they picked the right time and the right place. That happens. Think of a time in your life when once you made the decision, boom, everything just fell in place. And it's coming from that place of love. Now, there's one thing I want to address in this is I want to make sure we don't create or cause what I call metaphysical malpractice. I think the current vernacular for it is spiritual bypass. And be afraid of recognizing, acknowledging, and speaking about suffering, whether it's yours or someone else's. Because being aware of suffering does not create more suffering. Wallowing in it will create it for ourselves. But what we want to do is to acknowledge it, come to terms with it. Because when we do that, it opens up doors to freedom from it. It opens up doors for liberation. It opens up doors for us to get some clarity on how, if it's not my suffering and if it's somebody else's, opens up a door to help me figure out how to work with this myself. So when this person was talking to me, a visual, as many of you know, I'm pretty visual. What I saw in my mind's eye was these of people who were causing pain and suffering as they were like a ball of knots, each of them. And what I could see within that knot, that ball of knots, was that golden thread. That golden thread that once I saw it, there was a connection. There was a connection there. And now what it was by acknowledging that, by acknowledging her suffering, acknowledging their divinity in my own mind, I could see the knots begin to unravel by changing my thinking about that situation. And so if that helps you, please use that as that golden thread. And the more we recognize, the more threads we put in, the more strands of this beautiful golden shimmering love that we weave it into a strong rope, a rope of love. So what we do really matters. It really does matter. And when we come from love, when we become aware of our suffering or others, and we allow ourselves to open that door to freedom and liberation, It's because we remember the power of oneness. We remember the power of that golden thread, and we weave ourselves a powerful and strong rope. And in closing, I'm going to read to you something that drove this whole talk, drove it in a different path than what I was planning to go. And when as I was flying down here and decided to do, just go into the silence first part of that time. And this is what I wrote coming out of that. No matter what is going on in our experience on this plane of existence, no matter how hard we try to disconnect ourselves, there is a golden thread that is always connected between our human self and our divine self, between God, ourself and God, our higher self, the divine, whatever we want to call it, love. Every time we acknowledge that connection, every time we lean into faith, more threads connect. And eventually we weave a golden rope of connection. The more we recognize that God is all there is, that right action is taking place, leaning into our faith, know that good is unfolding, the stronger that rope becomes. Until one day, we no longer need to act as if, and we act because we are, and we know we are, and what we are is the great I am. And I'd like for each of you, if you can see your own little box, just look at your box. And if you can't see it or you don't have your camera on, go look in a mirror and just look at yourself and say, I am. I am. I am. And so in closing, I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment just because I'm being called to do that. And I know when I'm called to do that, I need to do it. And those of you who've been with me when I do prayer, I'll try to keep this one short. So I invite you, if you choose to, close your eyes. If not, maybe just cast them down a little bit and just go into that I always used to call it the baby stare. Because what I know and from where I speak is that God is all there is. And I say this prayer, I speak this prayer for and about each and every one of us right now in this moment. But what I know is there's only one. There's only one on this call, and it is expressing itself in the multiplicity, the beautiful diversity, the individuality, the uniqueness of each and every one of us. And so as we go into this week coming up, as we go into maybe our Labor Day celebrations with family and friends, or whatever it may be, school starting, it's a big week this week, that what I claim, accept, and declare for each and every one of us, for the one that is here right now, is that love is all there is. And that it is the love that each of us is, that each of us are, that comes forward, that pushes away, that sends back to its nothingness anything that prevents itself from being there, anything that is unlike it. And that each of us, as we move through our week, that we see with those eyes of God. We see that divine thread of connection. We hear with the ears of God, and we hear the love in every situation. And we speak from love. We lean into, we descend into the love that we are, and it is love that comes through our words. Oh, and the God bumps that I get to just know this truth, to speak it in the word, to let it be ready to let it go into the action of the law because love points the way and the law is what allows it to happen. I now, in love, in joy, in gratitude, release this word into the action of the law, being driven by love, being held by love. And I just let this go and let it be. And so it is.